Well, hello, awesome students. We are, like day 3 of the course. I was going to say halfway through week 1, but really it's like almost halfway through week 1. Like noon today would be halfway through week 1. I don't know, whatever we dice it, but we're coming on halfway through week 1. Now, I wanted to stress a couple of things. I encourage all students to be proactive and engaged as much as possible in the course. And it'll certainly, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I only got about 6 students who have posted to the board thus far. So somewhere in the range of about 80% of the class has not engaged in the discussion board this week. Now, gang, you certainly have up until Thursday night at 11:59 p.m., but those students who are waiting, who are pushing the deadline, honestly are just creating more stress for themselves and creating more challenges in successfully completing the program. Now, I'll probably talk about a lot of tips, success strategies along the way, but I really want to encourage you all to work more aggressively and get things done earlier in the week as opposed to later in the week. Now, one of the biggest reasons why I stress this is because we never know what's going to happen tomorrow. So, for example, if you're thinking, oh, I got time, and then Thursday afternoon, your child gets sick and you got to run to school and pick up him or her and take them to the doctor. And the next thing you know, you get home at 11 o'clock at night after sitting in the ER for 5 hours. And then you're exhausted and you go to sleep and you wake up the next day, Friday, and you realize you didn't complete your discussion post. So a few things are going on. You've got a busy Friday. You're overwhelmed. You're stressed. You're got tons of things to do at work. You've got kid stuff to do. You got to prepare for the family get together on Saturday. And now somewhere in the day, you got to figure out where you're going to do this discussion post. Get things done earlier in the week. Anticipate that there might be problems. We never know what's going to go on tomorrow. And if you get done sooner as opposed to later, you can alleviate those stressors. Okay? Be thinking about that. Also be proactive in working ahead as much as possible because we never know what's going to go on next week as well. So again, the more prepared you are, the better. Now, last term, I had 6 students that fell into a category of getting a lower grade. Instead of getting, say, for example, a B plus in the class, they got a B in the class, or instead of an A minus, they got a B plus in the class. I had one student who should have gotten an A minus in the class and ended up with a D plus because they missed key deadlines. Gang, there's not a lot I can do about that when the class is closed and things happen right at the deadline. There's not a lot I can do about it to help you. So be mindful of this because it's going to dramatically impact your grade. And one thing that I like to stress to all students is in education programs, in psychology programs, and there are some programs, if you're getting a business degree and you earn that degree and you go out and you interview for a job in sales or something like that, they're going to care if you have a degree or not. In psychology, when you go to apply for graduate school, you go to apply for internship, you apply for teaching, you have to hand them your transcripts. So the person sitting across from you interviewing you is going to know what grade you got in what classes you got and whether or not you were a good candidate. So be thinking about this because it is really easy to stay on top of these things and get things done sooner as opposed to later and alleviate a tremendous amount of stress. And so I get off my soapbox now and talk about the real reason I'm here, and that is for some clarification on the assignment this week, the journal submission for this week. So I wanted to give you some additional information on completing this assignment correctly. How's that? Completing this assignment in a way that's going to be beneficial to you so that you learn more in the process and get more out of the submission. So before I do, let me give you a little crash course on something called projective assessments. A projective assessment is something we're going to put in front of a client and ask them to give us some information in order to learn about their personality. So, for example, the most commonly recognized or known projective assessment is something called the Rorschach or the ink black test, where we put a card in front of somebody and we say a simple statement of, what might this be? And we're hoping that the individual is going to provide some information beyond, well, it's some colored ink on a card. We want this individual to describe what it is that they're seeing, and their responses will be coded into some different information, and we can learn a lot about their personality. It's actually a really cool assessment to facilitate. There are other types of projective assessments that we utilize. They're commonly utilized when we're doing child-based assessments, but we use them across the board. And what we're looking for is for an individual to give us some depth of information that describes some thoughts and feelings or insights. And one of the things that we want to focus on is the story. So let me shift gears a little bit and talk about the submission, the journal submission for this week in a little more depth to give you a little more information on working toward completion. So when we look at the assignment this week, when we talk about this, it's going to talk about something called a TAT or a thematic appreciation test. And this is an assessment where we're going to give an individual where they're going to have some pictures and they're going to describe what it is they're seeing. And you can see in here, it requires the use of imagination to tell a story. These are some of the things that I want you to think about when you're working on the assignment this week, is not so much thinking two-dimensionally, like here's a picture of a person and they took a selfie and this is what they're doing, but more so give me some depth of a story and give me something in terms of understanding or seeing aspects of personality, thoughts and feelings, things that might be going on, as opposed to just what you're seeing in the picture. Now, consistent with the instructions here is we're going to get a little more depth into understanding what the TAT is and some of these other types of things, but I want you guys to start thinking more in terms of giving more depth of information, things that we could see to understand what might be going on in terms of personality. So let's talk about a couple of the pictures here so that you have a little general understanding of what might be going on when we look at some of these items. So as we scroll through these, you're welcome to pick any one of the 4 or 5 different pictures that we have available here. But if we take a look at some of these photos, we could see that this is a little bit more than somebody reaching out with their phone and taking a quick selfie of what might be going on within the scene, that there is some depth there, that there is a conversation going on between two individuals, or there is something happening around them related to an event that you want to talk some depth on. Tell a story about what is happening in this picture. You can name the individuals. You can talk about some of the things that you think and feel might be happening. As the instructions talk about, there are no right or wrong answers here, but when you look at this picture and you think to yourself, what is happening in this picture? Think more in terms of a story. For example, Ricky has come into the student clinic today and she's met with her support worker, Tony, who has been coaching her through some troubling times. She's very distressed because she had a very troubling conversation with her parents about some things that are very personal to her. She's not sure what to do. She's very distressed and she's looking for some support with the issue. Now, I want you to answer the questions that you see on the worksheet, and I'm just giving you a general flavor about the types of things we would be looking for in a projective assessment, but I want you to think more in terms of depth, more in terms of she's very frustrated, she's extremely agitated, she's distressed, she's feeling depressed. That's not really a feeling, but want to think more in terms of thoughts, feelings, things that might be going on. Don't be afraid to take the story in your direction. And I also want you to not think a lot about the story as much as just looking at it and giving an idea of what you feel is going on in the story, as opposed to saying, well, here's some individuals that took a selfie before an event. Now, hopefully, this is helping to give you a little more depth and understanding about the assignment. But again, we're thinking in terms of a projective assessment. And I know many of you are not really familiar with that term yet, but you will be as we progress throughout the class and program. So again, be thinking more in terms of, if I was your therapist and you came in and I handed you a picture, what would you tell me about that picture? One more thing is, a couple of students asked about the 2 to 3 sentence thing and could they expand their thoughts a little bit. By all means, I encourage you all to expand your thoughts on all submissions. I certainly don't want you to kill yourself and write page after page after page, but certainly 4 or 5 good sentences, maybe a solid paragraph for each one of the questions would be very appropriate. By the way, this assignment probably should not take you any more than 90 minutes, maybe an hour if you're really slow on it. And again, make sure you do the readings this week so you're on track for success. Again, reach out if you need any assistance. I look forward to interacting with you on the discussion board this week. Have a great week.